Zawadi's back arched off the black silk sheets as Kang Tae-jun's mouth burned a path down her throat, teeth scraping the frantic pulse that now belonged to both brothers. Behind her, Min-jae's hand slid between her thighs, slow, merciless, drawing a broken moan from her lips that echoed off the penthouse windows. "Say it again," Tae-jun growled against her skin, hips pinning her in place. "I'm yours," she gasped,
I'm yours.
nails raking Min-jae's shoulder as he pushed deeper, stealing her breath.
Both of
Both
yours.
of yours. Forever.
Forever.
Two dragons claimed one flame, and she was already burning alive. But hey, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Stick with us to the end. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming. 6 months earlier. The first time Zawadi Wanjiku saw the Kang brothers, she was on her knees scrubbing blood off a casino floor in Busan. Not her blood. Some drunk idiot had lost 30 million won at their private baccarat table and decided to pull a knife. Tae-jun had broken the man's wrist with one hand, while Min-jae calmly wiped a speck of blood from his cuff. 30 seconds later, the idiot was being carried out, still screaming. The twins hadn't even raised their voices. That was the night her father's death went from dangerous to fatal. Now, 6 months later, she stood in their Gangnam penthouse wearing nothing but one of Tae-jun's white dress shirts, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hem brushing mid-thigh. The city glittered 48 floors below like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Tae-jun leaned against the kitchen island, shirtless, low-slung sweatpants riding dangerously on his hips, watching her like she was the only thing worth looking at in the entire capital. "You're staring," she said, voice still husky from last night. "You're breathing," he answered. "Same thing." Min-jae walked in from the gym, towel around his neck, sweat glistening on the sharp lines of his chest. His eyes flicked from her bare legs to his brother and back again. "She's wearing your shirt again. She looks better in it. She looks better out of it." Zawadi felt heat crawl up her neck. 6 months ago, she would have died before letting either of them talk to her like this. 6 months ago, she'd been a journalism student who thought loan sharks were the worst thing in the world. 6 months ago, she hadn't known what it felt like to be wanted by two dragons who would burn the city down before letting anyone touch her. Tae-jun pushed off the counter, stalked toward her. "We have a meeting tonight. Incheon. All 5 families." Her stomach tightened. "I'm coming." It wasn't a question anymore. It hadn't been for weeks. Min-jae's smile was slow and lethal. "You're not just coming, baby. You're walking in on our arms wearing the red dress. They need to see what happens when someone tries to take what's ours." She remembered the last time someone tried. 3 weeks ago, a white tiger lieutenant had grabbed her wrist in a Mapogu alley, whispering that the Kang brothers would tire of exotic pets soon enough. She'd broken 2 of his fingers before Tae-jun put a bullet in his knee, and Min-jae carved the black dragon mark into his cheek with a scalpel. They hadn't let her out of their sight for 4 days after that. She'd never felt safer. Tae-jun's hand slid into her curls, tilting her head back. After the meeting, he murmured against her lips, "We're taking you to the yacht, just the 3 of us. No guards, no phones. I want to hear you scream my name over open water." Min-jae moved behind her, lips brushing the shell of her ear. And mine. At the same time. Her knees almost gave out. This was her life now. 2 of the most feared men in Korea, and they lived for the sound of her moaning their names. She never wanted to wake up. The Incheon warehouse smelled of salt, rust, and barely contained violence. 5 families. 1 table. 30 armed men trying not to look nervous. Zawadi walked between Tae-jun and Min-jae in the crimson silk dress that clung like liquid fire. Heads turned. Guns shifted. She felt every stare like fingers on her skin. Park Soo-jin, the only other woman at the table, lifted an eyebrow in greeting. Lee Dong-hyun, head of the White Tigers, couldn't hide the hunger in his eyes when they landed on Zawadi's throat, marked with 2 fresh bruises shaped like twin mouths. Tae-jun's hand settled possessively on the small of her back. Min-jae's fingers brushed the bare skin of her upper arm, light but unmistakable. Message received. Touch her and die screaming. The meeting was supposed to be about port tariffs. It lasted exactly 4 minutes before Lee leaned forward. I hear the Kang brothers have a new pet, he said in slow, deliberate Korean. Pretty thing. Wonder how long before she gets bored of sharing. Silence fell like an axe. Zawadi felt Taejun go perfectly still, the kind of still that came right before bodies hit the floor. She stepped forward before either twin could move. I'm not a pet, she said in flawless Seoul dialect, voice ringing clear in the sudden quiet. I'm the reason your lieutenant cried for his mother last week. Want to find out why? She reached under the slit of her dress and pulled the custom Glock Min Jae had given her for her birthday, pearl grip, engraved with a tiny dragon on both sides, and laid it on the table with a soft, deliberate clack. Lee's smirk faltered. Park Soo-jin started laughing. Taejun's hand slid down to squeeze Zawadi's hip, pride and possession pouring off him in waves. Min Jae's voice was silk over steel. Does anyone else have questions about who she belongs to? No one did. The rest of the meeting passed in stunned, respectful silence. On the drive back, Taejun had the partition up before they even left the dock. He dragged her into his lap the second the car moved, mouth crashing against hers, hands shoving the silk dress up her thighs. You are perfect, he growled between kisses. Fucking perfect. Min Jae watched from the opposite seat, eyes black with hunger. Wait till we get home, brother. She earned the whole night. Zawadi laughed breathlessly against Taejun's lips. I earned the whole weekend. They gave her 3 days. 3 days on the yacht, anchored off Jeju. 3 days of sun and salt and skin. 3 days of being passed between them like she was the only thing keeping them sane. On the second night, Taejun carried her to the top deck while Min Jae poured champagne. The stars were so bright they hurt to look at. Taejun set her on the railing, hands gripping her thighs hard enough to bruise. Tell us again, he demanded, voice raw. Zawadi looked between them, her storm and her blade, her monsters and her salvation, and let the words fall like a vow. I love you, both of you, always. Min Jae stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, lips against her neck. We loved you first, he whispered. We'll love you last. Taejun kissed her like the world was ending. Maybe it was. Maybe theirs was just beginning. The typhoon hit Seoul like the city owed it money. Rain lashed the penthouse windows in sheets, thunder rolling so hard the glass trembled. Zawadi stood on the balcony in nothing but Min Jae's black dress shirt, arms wrapped around herself, watching lightning tear the sky open. She was 8 weeks pregnant, and the morning sickness had decided tonight was the night to punish her. The sliding door opened behind her. Taejun stepped out first, barefoot, sweatpants riding low, worry carved deep into his face. Min Jae followed, hair still damp from the shower, carrying a mug of ginger tea like it was the most fragile thing in the world. You're going to catch a cold, Taejun muttered, already shrugging out of his hoodie to drape it over her shoulders. I needed air, she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. Min Jae set the tea on the railing and cupped her face gently. Talk to us. She laughed, wet and broken. I just killed a man, Min Jae. 2 nights ago. I put a bullet in Juma's chest and watched the light leave his eyes, and I didn't even flinch. And now I'm standing here terrified because I felt the baby kick for the first time an hour ago, and I'm scared I'm too much of a monster to be someone's mother. Silence. Just the storm and her heartbeat. Taejun's arms came around her from behind, strong and shaking. You're not a monster. I am, she choked out. I chose this. I chose you. I chose blood and guns and power, and I liked it. What kind of mother does that make me? Min Jae's thumb brushed the tear sliding down her cheek. The kind who will burn the world down before letting anyone touch her child. The kind our baby is lucky to have. She turned in Taejun's arms and buried her face in his chest. He held her like she was the only solid thing left in the universe. "I'm scared," she whispered against his skin. "I'm so scared I'll ruin her." Taejun's voice was raw. "Then we'll ruin the world together, so she never has to know what fear feels like." Min-jae pressed his forehead to hers. "You're not doing this alone, Zawadi. Never again." She cried then. Ugly, wrenching sobs that tore out of her chest like shrapnel. They held her through all of it, 2 dragons shielding their flame from the storm. Later, in bed, she lay between them. Taejun's hand splayed protectively over the small curve of her stomach. Min-jae's fingers laced through hers. "I want to name her Asha," she said into the dark. Min-jae kissed her temple. "Hope." Taejun's lips brushed her shoulder. Perfect. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines. White Tiger remnants wiped out overnight. Entire leadership found dead in safe house. No suspects. Zawadi read it on her phone while eating mango slices Min-jae had cut for her. She looked up at the twins standing at the kitchen island, both pretending to be very interested in their coffee. "You didn't have to kill all of them," she said quietly. Taejun met her eyes without flinching. "They looked at you wrong once. That was enough." Min-jae's voice was softer. "They would have come for the baby. We ended the bloodline. It's done." She should have been horrified. Instead, she felt safe. The kind of safe that came from knowing 2 men would literally slaughter an army for her and the life growing inside her. She set the phone down and walked over, sliding her arms around both of them. "Thank you," she whispered. Taejun kissed her hair. Min-jae kissed her forehead. "Anything for you. Always." 2 weeks later, she walked into the most important meeting of her life wearing a midnight blue hanbok dress that hid the growing curve of her stomach and carried death in her smile. The 5 families, what was left of them, sat around the table in the old tea house in Bukshan. Park Soo-jin was already there, legs crossed, sipping barley tea like she owned the place. Zawadi took her seat between Taejun and Min-jae without waiting to be invited. Lee Dong-hyun's cousin, the new White Tiger head, opened his mouth to protest. Zawadi cut him off. "You're breathing my air right now because I allow it. Speak again and we'll see how long that lasts." Silence. Park Soo-jin's smile was slow and approving. Zawadi leaned forward. "Here's how this is going to work. There will be one family, Black Dragon, my family. You keep your territories, your soldiers, your profits. You pay 30% to us. In return, no one touches you. Ever. You want to refuse?" She slid a folder across the table. Inside, photos of every single person in the room with their families. Children leaving school, wives at the market, mistresses in love hotels. The message was crystal. Park Soo-jin was the first to stand. "I'm in." One by one, they all folded. By the time Zawadi stood up to leave, the entire Seoul underworld belonged to 3 people. And one of them wasn't even born yet. That night, they celebrated on the penthouse rooftop. Taejun had strung fairy lights. Min-jae had cooked actual home-cooked bulgogi and japchae because apparently the quiet dragon could cook like a Michelin chef when he wanted to impress her. They ate under the stars, her feet in Taejun's lap, Min-jae feeding her pieces of mango between kisses. "I have something for you," Taejun said suddenly. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a ring. Black gold band, 1 flawless ruby shaped like a flame, 2 smaller diamonds on either side like dragon eyes. Min-jae took her left hand. Taejun took her right. "We had it made the day we found out about Asha," Min-jae said quietly. 1 ring, 2 dragons, 1 flame. Zawadi's eyes filled with tears. "Marry us," Taejun said, voice rough. "Not because of a contract, not because of a debt. Marry us because you want to, because you love us." She looked between them, these 2 impossible men who had bought her, broken her, rebuilt her into something stronger. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They slid the ring onto her finger together. Then they made love to her under the fairy lights, slow and reverent, hands worshipping the life growing inside her, mouths whispering promises against her skin. After, she lay between them, ring catching the moonlight, city silent beneath them for once. I used to think love was soft, she murmured, gentle, safe. Tae-jun kissed her bare shoulder. And now? Now I know love can have teeth. She smiled, sharp and beautiful and utterly unafraid. We're not done yet, babies. You can't wait to see what happens next. The birth, the final war, and the moment Zawadi becomes the most powerful woman in Korea while covered in blood and afterbirth. You thought this was intense? Wait until you see what's coming. Comment on your favorite moment so far. Who made you scream louder, Tae-jun or Min-jae? Smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the bell, and make you share this with your toxic bestie who loves dark romance. The first contraction hit Zawadi like a bullet to the spine. She was standing in the private elevator, 39 weeks pregnant, on her way to the most important summit of her life, wearing a custom black suit that made her look like the queen of hell. The pain folded her in half so fast, she dropped the tablet she'd been reading. Tae-jun caught her before she hit the floor. Zawadi, breathe, baby, breathe. Another contraction slammed into her, closer than the first. Water gushed down her legs, soaking the Italian leather shoes Min-jae had buckled for her that morning. Fuck the summit, Min-jae snarled, already hitting the emergency button. Hospital, now. The elevator lurched to the penthouse level instead. Their private medical team was waiting. 2 doctors, 3 nurses, everything ready in the master suite because the twins had refused to let her give birth anywhere but home. Tae-jun carried her the whole way, whispering Swahili prayers against her temple while Min-jae barked orders in Korean sharp enough to cut glass. They laid her on the reinforced bed, silk sheets already swapped for medical pads. The lead doctor checked her. 8 centimeters. This baby is coming fast. Zawadi laughed through the pain, delirious. Of course she is. She's a Kang. Another contraction ripped a scream from her throat. Outside, the typhoon that had been threatening all week finally broke over Seoul. Labor lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of Zawadi cursing in 4 languages, gripping Tae-jun's hands so hard she left bruises, Min-jae counting her breaths like a metronome, both of them crying when she begged them to make it stop. And then there was a final, burning push, and a piercing cry split the storm. Asha Kang came into the world at 3:17 a.m., slick and perfect and furious, with her mother's deep brown skin and her father's storm gray eyes. Tae-jun cut the cord with shaking hands. Min-jae wrapped their daughter in a blanket the color of dragon scales and laid her on Zawadi's chest. Zawadi looked down at the tiny, fierce face and sobbed. She's ours, she whispered. She's really ours. The twins climbed onto the bed, surrounding her, surrounding their miracle. They stayed like that for an hour, just the 4 of them and the storm. Then the phone rang. Min-jae answered the speaker, still cradling Asha against his bare chest. Park Soo-jin's voice was tight. They hit the summit. Lee's cousin went rogue. It took 20 men. They're saying the Black Dragon is weak now. New baby, exhausted queen. They're coming for the penthouse. Zawadi's eyes snapped open. The soft, exhausted mother vanished. In her place sat the woman who had unified Seoul's underworld with nothing but a smile and a gun. She kissed Asha's tiny forehead, handed her to the nurse, and stood up on legs that should not have held her. Give me 5 minutes, she said, voice ice. Tae-jun started to argue. Zawadi, you just... She silenced him with a look that could have leveled cities. I just gave birth to our daughter in the middle of a war declaration. They want to see weakness? She walked to the safe, keyed in the code, pulled out the twin Desert Eagles Min Jae had custom-made for her, black and gold, engraved with dragons and her name in Hangul and Swahili. They're about to meet the Mother of Dragons. Min Jae's smile was slow, proud, and terrifying. Taejun kissed her hard. We'll hold the lobby. You take the roof. Snipers are already in position. She was still bleeding between her thighs, still leaking milk through the black tactical bra, but she moved like death itself. They rode different elevators, the building locked down floor by floor. Every guard in the Black Dragon network mobilized. The attackers breached the private garage at 4:02 a.m. By 4:07, the lobby looked like a slaughterhouse. Taejun and Min Jae fought back-to-back the way they had since they were children, storm and blade, unstoppable. Zawadi took the service stairs to the roof, barefoot, blood still trickling down her legs, rain plastering her hair to her face. She stepped out into the typhoon. 20 men in black tactical gear froze when they saw her. The rogue leader laughed. The Kang Hor came to play. Zawadi smiled. Then she opened fire. 2 Desert Eagles, 40 rounds, 20 bodies. She didn't miss once. When the last man dropped, she stood in the pouring rain, guns smoking, afterbirth and enemy blood mixing at her feet, and screamed into the storm, a sound of pure, feral triumph. Taejun and Min Jae found her like that 5 minutes later. They dropped their weapons and ran to her. She collapsed into their arms, adrenaline crashing, body finally giving out. Min Jae caught her before she hit the ground. Taejun pressed his forehead to hers, voice breaking. You're insane. You're perfect. Never do that again. She laughed, weak and delirious. Take me to our daughter. They carried her back downstairs, past the bodies, past the wide-eyed guards who would tell this story until they died. The night the queen gave birth, and then painted the roof red. The nursery was warm and quiet. Asha was asleep in her bassinet, tiny fist curled by her cheek. Zawadi crawled into the massive bed, still trembling, and the twins stripped off their blood-soaked clothes and climbed in on either side. Min Jae laid Asha on Zawadi's chest. Taejun wrapped his arms around them both. Outside, the typhoon began to calm. Inside, the most powerful family in Korea slept tangled together, mother, fathers, daughter, hearts beating in the same fierce rhythm.